Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says tackling the plastic problem. What is the context? There was a report released by the United Nations Environment Programme in 2021. According to it, emissions of plastic waste into the aquatic ecosystem may triple by 2040 if suitable actions are not taken by the national and the global community. So let us try and understand what is the impact of this plastic pollution and what measures have to be taken by the local, regional as well as at the international level. First up, let's understand the meaning of externality. What is the meaning of externality? Let's say for example, there is a third party, a party who is not involved in the production, who is not involved in the consumption of a particular good. If a third party is impacted either positively or negatively because of a particular product is what is called as externality. Let me give you an example. Let's say for example, there is a car manufacturer. The car manufacturer manufactures the car. So he is the producer of that particular good. Then you have a particular person who drives this particular car, but it emits gases as well. This gas is inhaled by another person. So the person inhaling this gas which is released by the car, though this car is not used by him, though it is not produced by this particular person, is what is called as externality. So there can be positive externality, there can be negative externality because of a particular situation. So when it is positive externality, positive impact will happen on a third party. If it is negative externality, negative consequences and implications will have to be borne by this third party. Then we also have something called as the consumption externality. What is this consumption externality? As we discussed, there are two people here. One is the producer of the good, the other is the consumer of the good. If the consumer of the good continues to take this particular product for a longer period of time and this has negative impact on the environment or to the society, that is what is called as consumption externality in a negative sense. Let's take the example, the plastic. Plastics, yes, are produced by the manufacturers and the producers, but because people continue to use it for a longer period of time, what can it impact? It impact the marine life as well. It impacts the environment. So what is consumption externality? There is a product that is produced by a particular producer, but this is consumed excessively by a particular people, and as a result it can have negative implications. Then we have something called as production externality. What is production externality? This is a side effect because of an industrial operation. Let's say for example, there is a paper mill. It produces all the waste, it does not treat it, it does not filter it, but ultimately dumps the waste into a river. So who is having a negative implication? It is the environment, it is the marine life. But what is the root cause? The root cause happens to be the producer, and the producer in this case happens to be the industry. So externality can have positive implications. Externality can also have negative implications as well. The author in this particular case goes on to say, with respect to the plastic, what we have is negative externality. Why? That is because plastic of late is used in number of scenarios. It is used in day-to-day affairs. It is used as a bag, it is used as a bottle, it is used as a chair, it is used in number of products that we cannot imagine the world without the plastic. So who will have the major problem? The environment will have the major problem. Why? Because the plastic will take long time to decompose, and as a result it is the environment which will face the consequences. Since we do not have the recycling programs, these are not recycled. Ultimately everything is dumped into the marine aquatic ecosystem, and it is the marine life, the marine fisheries, the wildlife who are the worst hit by the plastic. And as a result, all those people whose livelihoods, like the fishermen whose base is the marine life, they are also impacted because of the excessive plastic use. Added to it, remember, when plastic is continuously used, we will have more issues with respect to the health of the people. Why? Because these marine life also ingest the plastic. This plastic ingested by this marine life ultimately comes back to the food of the human beings, and their health will also get impacted as well. So the author in this particular case says that plastic is a symbol of consumption externality and not production externality. And if we go on to impose taxes excessively, this will not help us in finding the solutions as consumers have got used to the plastic. So what we require is an alternative means and mechanisms, says the author. In many countries world over, in order to overcome this particular issue, they have banned the plastic bags. It can be at the national level, it can be at the state level, it can also be at the local level. Such a step, such a drastic step is very important for the environment. Why? Because it promotes the sustainable environment. It also saves the marine and the wildlife ecosystem. It also restores the soil quality, and everything will fall in place in the environmental ecosystem. However, this also has negative implications as well. There are issues surrounding this particular ban issue as well. What are those? One, consumers will not have the alternative. This will increase the substitution cost. This will create unemployment shock as it affects the production of the plastics, leading to less economic activity, less income generation, and finally less employment. So there are many countries, many states, many local governments which have gone ahead with banning of the plastics. But banning, though it is environmentally friendly, what we have to see is the negative implications of this particular initiative. So this cannot be done instantaneously without any plan. So what the author goes on to say, he comes up with what is called as multiple instruments or measures to overcome this plastic menace. What are these instruments that are at the disposal of the government and the people? The author brings into light what is called as the command and the control approach. What is this command and control approach? This is where the public authorities, the political leaders, the ones who are running the government should be able to make the laws. So what should they do? They should make laws so that an incentive is given for the industry and awareness is created about the plastic pollution to the people, so that there is incentive on one side, subsidy allocated, so that everything falls in place. So the command and control approach is basically about enacting a law. Let's say for example we have the environmental impact assessment. Let's say for example we have the polluter pays principle. These are some of the laws that can be enacted by the legislature, implemented by the executive. Or let me also give you another example. Let's say for example with respect to the emission standards, what we also have is Bharat 6 right now in place. We had the Bharat 4 vehicles, but now what we have is Bharat 6 vehicles as well. Such laws can be taken up by the executive. Added to it, fiscal reforms can be initiated by the government. What do we mean by fiscal reforms? Basically, this can be divided into two parts. One is what is called as eco taxes. The other is what is called as the subsidies. So we have to provide subsidies to the industries so that they can venture into new programs, so that they can come up with an alternative to the existing plastic, and at the same time, if there is continuous usage of plastic, taxes can also be imposed. So the idea is that we are not going to ban plastic immediately without an alternative solution, but instead we are pushing, encouraging industries to come up with an alternative, and at the same time imposing taxes so that people can actually avoid the plastics. So basically, whenever we are imposing the taxes, this has to be reasonable, this has to be transparent, and ultimately how are we going to execute this particular program has to be on a transparent basis. Not only that, we have to take into picture whether the taxes will be imposed at the production level or the consumption level, or where the plastic is being disposed of. If it is happening at the production level, basically this will be imposed on the producers. If it is happening on the consumption level, this will be happening on the consumers of the plastic, which is the general public. And if it is about the disposal of the plastic, whoever disposes that particular plastic, a taxation will be imposed on them. So identifying a transparent process and ultimately deciding where we are going to impose this taxation is what needs to be taken up by the government. Added to it, we also have to picturing the social cost as well. What is the social cost? It is nothing but the private cost. It is nothing but the external cost and the cost that the society will have to bear because of the plastic pollution. So we have to take into picture the local and regional circumstances and the global context context as well. Let's say for example, because of plastic there will be health issues, there will be hygiene issues that will have to be taken as part of the social cost, and because of the global context of plastic pollution we may also have to feature in the climate change related issues as well. All this will have to be taken, and how is it going to impact the society? The same, its evaluation has to be done, a scientific analysis has to be done, numbers will have to be taken up, and ultimately what we have to come up is with the mechanism. So a comprehensive policy measure against plastic may generally involve three complementary activities, which includes removal of existing taxes and subsidies. Why? Because as of now it may have been imposed in a haphazard manner, but what we require is a logical connotation. So come up with new set of taxation system, then taking into account the different types of grades of plastics, and ultimately restructuring existing taxes in an environment friendly manner. Added to this, which can happen at the command and control approach level and the fiscal reforms level and the taxation level, we also have to make sure that people are also given an awareness about the harmful impact of the plastic. On one side, we have to make sure that there are companies who are given the subsidies so that they can develop an alternative means to the plastic, and at the same time we also have to ensure that public are given an awareness so that they can go for an alternative substitute. Appropriate disposal mechanisms and waste management schemes and mechanisms, and using the plastic in the construction of roads can also be taken up so that we can ultimately reduce the menace of the plastic. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about the National Science Day. The National Science Day is celebrated every year on February 28th. Why? That is because let's go back to the year 1928. 1928 was when Sir C.V. Raman discovered the phenomenon of scattering of photons. This ultimately came to be called as the Raman effect, and in the year 1930 he happened to receive the Nobel Prize for his discovery on the scattering of light. As a result, February 28th every year is celebrated as the Science Day, because it was on this day that we were able to discover something called as the Raman effect. Back in the year 1986, we had the National Council for Science and Technology, which asked the government of India to designate February 28th as National Science Day. And since 1987, this event is celebrated across the country in all the schools and colleges, universities and other research institutions as the scientific day, because of the discovery and because of the Nobel Prize that India got. How does India celebrate the National Science Day? On this particular day, message is sent across the length and breadth of the country about the significance of the scientific applications in the day-to-day life of the people. Students are given an scientific awareness. This is also being taught at the college levels and university levels so that we can also achieve scientific progress in the near future. So an opportunity is given on this day to the scientific minded citizens to understand the historical past, the achievements of the scientific community, so that the same can also be reaped in the near future as well. In order to commemorate it, we also have the government of India which has come up with Vigyan Sarvatra Pujyate. What is this Vigyan Sarvatra Pujyate? This will be a week-long science exhibition which took place from February 22nd up until 28th of 2022. This will be an exhibition of celebrating the science and technology, displaying the country's scientific legacy as well as the technological prowess. But this article goes on to say that apart from we teaching the students about the achievements of the past, we also have to speak about how they have to apply their scientific minds, how they have to fight the cause of friction that is present in the society, and ultimately develop a rational and a critical mind in the near future. The author brings into picture two important narratives. One, he speaks about the partial and conflicting visions. What do we mean by it? Let's say, for example, when we speak about the society, a society has a particular narrative about how a society has to run. This may not be facts based. This may be on the basis of philosophy. This may be on the perception of God says them. This might be on the perception of what that society is all about, whether it is a Hindu society or the Christian Christian society or the Islamic society or any society for that matter, it has its own philosophical intent behind it. This may not be rational, this may not be factual, this may not be scientifically accepted or rational as well. So we have a particular society which is run by a system which is away from science, and on the other side we also have a society which is based on science, which means there is rational in it, there is experimentation in it, there is data that is present, and all the facts that are proved on the basis of experiments and empirical data. So there is a conflict between the society which is based on religion and philosophy and values and ethos, and at the same time there is a society which is based on science, which is based on rationality. So there has always been a conflict between the society which is based on philosophy and the society which is based on science. Let's say for example we take the example of Sir C.V. Raman. Sir C.V. Raman had two major issues. One, he had to fight the English imperialism, on the other side the inherent problems that were existing in the society back then, and he had to overcome it and ultimately bridge the existing gap and come up with the Raman effect. This has also happened with Einstein as well. Or let's take the example of Galileo, or let's take the example of Nicholas Copernicus. All these people had to face the brunt of the society. So what this article basically says is that when there is a conflict between the society and science, we have to ensure that critical thinking, new ideas overcome the existence issues that are persisting in that society. Added to it, the author also goes on to say that if there is a political environment which is suffocating the scientific community, then the scientific community, the science-based people, will have to free themselves from the cultural chains of the past to foster original thinking. So basically, scientists have to ensure that there is rationalization, there is experimentation, there is data, experiments and facts that needs to be given importance, not the political suffocation or the cultural milieu that is existing in that particular system, as this forbids or acts as an impediment for the execution of the science-based projects. So the author goes on to say that when it comes to the National Science Day, it is just not about achievements of the past, but it is also about the future, questioning the inherent practices in the system, fighting against the disturbing consequences existing in the system, and ultimately putting more critical thoughts, more ideas, so that we are able to overcome these fundamentalist thought process that are existing in the society. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says no quick fix. The article here is speaking about the Indian students who went on to do their medicine from the country of Ukraine. And because of the Russia-Ukraine crisis, these people were the major sufferers and they had to be evacuated. After their evacuation program became successful, we also had the Prime Minister of our country who said that small countries of the world for the medical education can be avoided if India is able to empower its own people, where you had the participation of the private entrepreneurs, you have the participation of the state level government, and if these come together, come up with more medical educations, Indian students need not have to go to other countries, says the Prime Minister of India. However, this also has inherent problems, says this article. Why do the Indian students opt for countries like Ukraine? When it comes to the engineering education, or let's say for example any of the technology related education, or in fact it is to do with medicine, most of the people may prefer United States of America, UK, or few Western European countries, let's say Germany or France. But of late, because of the exorbitant prices, because of the high cost fee, and also because of huge tuition fees, many students are not preferring for these countries. Instead, they are opting for some other countries like Russia, China and Ukraine as well. Now the question is, why were they opting for Ukraine? Why do the Indian medical students go to Ukraine rather than other countries? That is because of multiple reasons. When it comes to Ukraine, it also has number of state level education. The state level education, that is the one which is run by the government, and the private agencies, if they are existing in Ukraine, offer the medical courses at a very low cost. If there is a person who has to study in India, he has to bear a cost of as much as 1 crore. But when it comes to Ukraine, it can be fulfilled with within 30 to 35 lakhs. Because it is low cost and because there are no medical examinations in India, you have number of medical examinations, the need for the UG as well as for the PG, and you also have the own universities running their own set of medical entrance as well. But when it comes to Ukraine, they do not have the medical examination for the colleges, and at the same time they also have English education. So all this means that you have the Indian students who would be able to go to Ukraine, complete their medical education, and also because this particular degree given by the Ukraine universities is recognized by number of European countries, most of the Indian students go up to Ukraine. So this article goes on to say that the Prime Minister's call of not moving to Ukraine but increasing the number of private colleges with the support of the state governments may not be successful in the near future. That is because of the possible reasons. When you consider India, we have huge population of Indians who still continue to be present predominantly in the rural areas. Most of the medical students may work in the rural areas, but they all want to come back into the urban areas. Why? That is because they would be able to change their fortunes, they would be able to earn more as well. That is why most of the people in India do not go up to the rural working zones, but they instead opt for the urban zones where they would be able to increase the earning rate. In fact, when we consider the infrastructure that is required for the medical colleges, we require the land, we require the equipment, we also require trained faculty as well. As of now, there are number of medical colleges in India which do not have the trained faculty, quality faculty. If we do come up with more, what we will have is issues concerning the quality of the doctors coming out of this university. Without correcting these deficiencies that are already existing in the system, the government should not make a plan for a long-term education, says this article. Added to it, when we speak about engineering programs or to do with the medical programs in India, what we have is huge number of colleges which support the undergraduation program, but when it comes to the post-graduation education, we do not have enough opportunities. So the article goes on to say that we have to focus on the postgraduate education, increase the infrastructure for the postgraduate education, correct the issues that are existing in the system, and then speak about increasing the number of colleges in the country. So it asks the government to basically increase the spending on the healthcare, make sure that more number of doctors are present in India, whereby infrastructure has to be developed, faculty will have to be of quality, and the government will have to ease the procedure for establishing medical colleges at the rural level. All these measures have to be taken, and only after these measures are taken, the government should think of expanding the medical colleges either by the private entrepreneurs or by the state agencies. But as of now, work on the existing issues is what is this article all about. Now let's look into the next article. There are about 3 articles in the Hindu. These 3 articles speak about India's position with respect to Russia and Ukraine crisis. Let us try and understand what is this article all about. When we look into this article, it basically goes on to say that India abstained from the United Nations Security Council resolution which wanted to condemn Russian military action against Ukraine. They were also seeking for the votes as well. They could have voted against Russia, they could have voted in favor of Russia, but India happened to abstain from voting. So this article says what were the options that were available with India and why did India take such a position and what could be its larger scale implications on India. When it comes to India, we saw for the fact that Russia was the aggressor and Ukraine happened to be one of the suffering state when it comes to the Russia's aggression. So what were the options that were available with India? One, India could have condemned the Russian aggression. Had India condemned the Russian aggression, what would have happened? This would have been against India and we could have developed issues and concerns with respect to Russia. So India did not opt for condemning Russian aggression. Second option that we had was to support the Russian aggression. Had we supported the Russian aggression, we would have enmity with Ukraine. We would have also had issues with United States of America and many other Western powers. So India did not go for the first option. India did not go for the second option. India could have also remained silent on the Russian aggression as well. This could have become pro-Russian as well. But instead of choosing the third option, India went on to express displeasure and call for diplomacy, where both the parties should ultimately get on the diplomatic tables and end this particular war, was the call given by India. So India chose the fourth option and not the other three options, primarily because of its own geopolitical considerations. What are these geopolitical considerations? When we speak about why did not India vote against Russia, India had its own share of assumptions. One is because this is not India's problem. If India happens to go on to support Russia, this would obviously make the West think about India in a negative way. If it happens to go against Russia, Russia will not keep quiet. Why? Because most of our defense equipments are sourced from Russia as well. In fact, we are also sourcing the anti-missile system that is from Russia in the form of S-400. So our defense equipments are from Russia. We also have a long-term friend in the form of Russia. So India cannot go against Russia. India cannot also go against the West as well. So India had to manage both the scenarios, which is why India had to take the fourth step. Added to it, we also have the problem with China as well. India's problem is not Russia. India's problem is not the West as well. India's problem happens to be China. So India has to balance both the United States of America and Russia in the present situation, because China is the major aggressor and a problematic area for India. Added to it, we also know for the fact that United States of America's led global order is also taking a transition as well. The United States of America's dominance is actually down, and what we have is an aggression in the form of China. So during this particular process, what China can do to India was recently seen along the line of actual control. While this entire proceedings may happen in the near future, so to temper New Delhi's growing isolation in a rather friendless region, what we require is the support of Russia. Russia may not stop China, but it may also act as a bridge between India and China. So India cannot take a position against Russia is another argument. Further, we have something called as the continental space and the maritime sphere. What is the continental space? The continental space is more to do with the land boundaries, and the maritime sphere is more to do with the oceanic boundaries. When it comes to the continental space, we have issues that we can surface from Pakistan, from China, and also from Afghanistan. And for India, we need connectivity to Central Asia as well. And there are other organizations like the SEO. In all these places, one of the friends of India happens to be Russia. So in order to gain complete control on the continental space on the land front, we require cooperation from Russia. That is why India did not vote against Russia. When it comes to the maritime sphere, we have the oceanic sphere that immediately steps in. Let's take the example of Indo-Pacific. When it comes to the Indo-Pacific, we have the United States of America. We also have Japan and Australia. We have the support of the Quad as well. So India cannot also completely leave away United States of America. It requires the support of the United States of America and the Quad on the oceanic front, which is why it does not also want to take a viewpoint against the West. So it had to abstain and balance both the powers, Russia and United States of America. What could be the consequences because of this entire saga of Ukraine and Russia crisis? This may embolden China. Why? That is because as of now, NATO is not helping Ukraine, or in fact United States of America is not also assisting Ukraine. So in the near future, if there are any issues, no country will stand by another country. So it may embolden China and expand its territorial ambitions, and this could also be a problematic area between India and Russia, as the defense cooperation may also see a problem as well, and this may also increase China and Russia's bonhomie, further isolating India. And added to it, US-Russia rivalry will also increase further, and this will not have any focus on the Indo-Pacific region, because the entire focus will be on Russia and US issue. So these are some of the negative issues that may haunt India because of the Russia and Ukraine crisis. So India in the near future may opt for interest over principles, when it comes to the foreign policy is what is this article all about. Now let's look into the main practice questions. Plastic sticks around in the environment for ages, threatening wildlife and marine species. Discuss India's efforts towards reducing its plastic footprint. Next question. India should set itself free from the cultural change of the past to foster critical thinking. In light of the statement, examine how the National Science Day can nurture a new generation of youth. So please write all your answers on the comment section. Peer review. Do give positive feedback to your friends' answers. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.